Hey, man.
Hey, how's it going?
It's going good. Sorry for the delay. That was a bad miscommunication on my part.
Oh, it's all good.
Look at that. That is gross. That ain't better. Hey, Google, turn my living room sunset. Slightly better, right? Yeah. Good
Sunset,
stuff,
interesting.
man. It's a nice, like, warm tone, but still bright. Do you go by Christopher or Chris?
Either or. Yeah, you can
Okay.
call me. Most people just call me Chris because that's shorter. It's 2 syllables less.
Fair enough. You tell me, is that is it
Yeah,
coming through
sounds
this?
good.
Awesome.
Is that a 7B?
Epic gamer movement. Say again.
Is that a 7B?
I wish. No, I'm borrowing this from a friend. It's a PreSonus PD70.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but from everything I've heard, it's probably like it's $100 mic. That's probably within like a 1 to 2% range of the same frequency spectrum. So I'm here for it.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
Good stuff, man. Um,
Cool.
well, yeah. Any show notes before we dive in?
No, usually I just start out by just diving in. I have a couple like questions to start off, and you're actually my first guest that I haven't like met in person. So
Well, I'm honored then.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, and so like I guess I'll just start off by saying first how I heard of your band Heliocentric. I was at a lot of people on Twitch, so Ryan Kirby was streaming, and some musicians are they just like take requests to listen to certain music, and so some guy had put on I think it was Antithesis
Mm-hmm.
of their her band sing it was a single, right?
So that was a single that was then released on my second full length, Ishmael.
Okay, gotcha. Yeah, so I heard that. I was like, man, this is really interesting. And then I think that same night is when I like found your Instagram, followed you, and we had a couple exchanging of words and DMs, and yeah, right. And then here we are.
Dude, that is crazy though. I don't know if I realized that Ryan Kirby has heard my music because that's so funny. He's I have like a vague memory of seeing them. I think it was either right after they released their first LP or like shortly before, maybe. Um, but yeah, man, seeing them at a show, with like 20 people at it out in the boonies of North Carolina, it's crazy to see how they've taken over the scene.
Yeah, because I remember I think they're one of the many bands I've discovered through Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I first heard of like I guess it was their second album because like they re-released their first when they got signed to Solid State.
Yeah.
So the first time I actually saw them, I think was Warped Tour. It was 2014 in Charlotte.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, it was a fun time. And then I've also seen them a couple times. Actually, I just saw them like a couple, was it last week? It was like a week or two ago with Oxford's Red
Oh
playing their
heck yeah.
Leveler 10-year anniversary tour.
Oh geez, I'm bummed that I missed that. I haven't gone to a show in a long time. It's even before COVID. It's been 2 or 3 years.
Oh,
I'm a
really?
failure of a metalhead.
Yeah. Well, no, it's all good. I know. Just as long as you buy a lot of vinyl, I think you'll be fine.
It helps.
Yeah, because that's what a lot of like music or just fans are doing nowadays. And it's like high demand for vinyl again.
Oh
I
yeah.
I kind of prefer more CDs because it's easier to listen to in my car, versus like
Mm,
pulling out the old record player, which I don't think I have like out here anymore. Yeah, I think I stored it in my closet either. But anyway,
that's. I feel like if I buy a vinyl, if I buy a new vinyl, it's exclusively so that I can, chop it out and like make a plaque out of it. Um, I've been meaning to do that with Meshuggah's Catch 33 for the longest time. If I could get my hands on like an OG Meshuggah vinyl like that, that would be sick. But then otherwise, like my preference with vinyls is that it has to be old, dilapidated, and covered in mold, and it has to cost less than like $2. Those are the vinyls that I usually go after.
Gotcha. Nice. Well, so I want to start a little bit with, I guess I'll start with how you formed Heliocentric, and then maybe dive back and deep into how you first started out playing music. I'm just kind of first interested to see how you came up with the name Heliocentric and that whole endeavor of your music in that band, which is just you, right?
Unfortunately, I feel the pinch of being a one-man band more and more. You know, it's like cool to say at a cocktail party, like, oh yeah, I did all this myself. But then when you really break it down, it's like, oh yeah, but then I can't play live shows, and I'm very limited with my creative input. And so it's not all it's cracked up to be, but at the same time, I'm grateful. But yeah, so I don't know, man. I started dabbling in music, probably music production, before I started dabbling in music. Like, you know, maybe I taught myself how to play piano when I was 14, 15. And then I found somebody online who was making beats with Fruity Loops, FL Studios. And I was like, this is sick. And it's the coolest thing, because if you don't know how to play like guitars, bass, or drums or whatever, anybody can make dubstep. So I'm like, awesome, I'm going to buy this, you know, get my parents to buy it for me for Christmas. And I'm going to make dubstep because, you know, it's going to be my creative outlet despite not knowing any like real instruments. So did that for a couple of years in high school and was really bad at it. Then when I was 19, I was in seminary. I say seminary as shorthand, but it was a non-accredited school of ministry, which people don't have like a category for what that is, but I basically say seminary. Yeah, so I was 19. I walked into a guitar shop one day and saw a used 7-string LTD, and I was like, I have to. It's destiny, you know. And so I was an idiot and bought my first guitar as a 7-string when I was 19 years old. And I knew that I wanted to play metal. I knew that I wanted to be a genty boy, and so that was just kind of like, you know, dive headlong into it. So I started playing, and I started writing, and I started writing about the stuff that I was learning in seminary. And it was weird, you know. So the school was in Concord, North Carolina. I mean, right beside the racetrack there. And weirdly enough, there was a ton of like Christian metal kids in the seminary. I mean, it was like a large minority of kids were in the scene, and there were several bands that, you know, sprouted up and sizzled out in that time. And so my hope was that like, oh man, I've got like a crappy audio interface, I've got a guitar, I've got some drum loops, I can start, you know, making some songs. And then, you know, eventually when I find some like, you know, real players and some real bandmates, then they can come along and like help me write this stuff. And so I, you know, started writing stuff, and the bandmates never came. And so it was sort of like, all right, I was waiting around for somebody to help me along with this, and nobody ever came. And so it's like, all right, you write a track and it's crap, so you revise it for a while, and then, okay, well, what if I move this here and I start doing some EQ and compression, and then it's like, oh, that doesn't sound awful. And then, you know, the next thing you know, you buy a little bit more gear, get a little bit more experience, and it's like, crap, I've got a home studio now, kind of by accident. And then a little bit more time goes by, and then it's like, well, crap, now I have a full album. And then it just kind of becomes like the obvious next step is like, yeah, I guess I don't have to wait for the rest of the band to come. I guess I can just put it out there. So my entire first album, Perpetual Felicity, was all about the early fathers and mothers of the church. So that's kind of my big interest, is the first 3 centuries of Christianity. They call that the ante-Nicene era. Ante, meaning before, not anti as in against.
Okay.
Funny enough, let's see if I can do this without screwing up my. So all of those books in the corner, the volumes on top, that is the entire Bible printed on a normal sized font. It's a lot bigger than people realize.
No.
But those 10 books under it, those are all of the writings of every Christian before the year 325 AD. So, that corpus of literature is what I try to spend a lot of time studying up on. And so one of the dudes in there is a dude named Tertullian. So he is sometimes called the father of the Latin Church. He's the first major theologian to have written in Latin. And he is attributed with coining the term Trinity. So the word Trinity is found nowhere in the Bible. It's not in the Old Testament, certainly not. Well, I mean, it's not in the New Testament. But Tertullian, who is writing, right at the turn of the 3rd century, he was one of the theologians who really fleshed out, like, what does it mean for God to be 3 in 1? What does it mean that, Jesus is God, but he's not God the Father? And the analogy that he used with that was, well, imagine a star, a star like the sun, the sun. And he said, imagine, that, we feel the heat from the sun, and we see the light of the sun, and then there's the body of the star itself. But somehow the light is not the heat is not the body of the star, and the body of the star is not the light. So they're all distinct, but somehow they're one. They're one, but they're not one and the same. And there's a lot of ways in which that analogy breaks down really quickly. And that's kind of the story of Trinitarian orthodoxy, is any metaphor or analogy that you use to try to explain it ultimately breaks down and eventually becomes heretical. But I think I really appreciated his earnest attempt at explaining it. And so, yeah, I think that something about that was kind of like beautiful and ingenious to me. So thus heliocentric was born.
Very cool. I don't know anyone that's like dive deep into that kind of era of just not only like history, but just like, I'm gonna write music relating to that. That's really cool. So you was that in your seminary time that you really like dived into that kind of study?
Yeah. So I think that, right after high school, so my senior year of high school, I was the student chaplain. So I was responsible for preaching to, the entire high school and middle school, once a week, once every couple weeks, 3 times a week, depending on, how busy crap was. And I think during that time, I got really perplexed by the way that my Pentecostal friends were talking about the early church, right? You hear that thrown around by pastors all the time, like, we need to become the, like the Acts church, the 1st century church. And I heard that so often, and my mind kind of, drew a blank when it's like, okay, well, the 1st century church, sorry, I'm getting phone's blowing up. But yeah, there was this question of like, well, my knowledge of church history then was like, well, there was Jesus, there was Paul, there was the book of Acts, then there was a 1500-year gap, and then there was Martin Luther. And it's like, that bugged me. And when I, just barely scratched below the surface, it was like, I scratched a little bit, and then the dam burst open, and it's like, oh my God, there is a lot here. Let me put that on. I'm not sure if you're hearing that, but
No, I'm not hearing it.
oh, okay. I'm getting a whole bunch of phones blowing up with humans. As long as you're not hearing it, it's good then. No, but so I mean, like it kind of bewilders me how Protestants in particular, they're just really bad at like knowing their church history, which is tragic because it's really good and it's fascinating. And it's like one of the first theologians that I ever listened to talk about church history. He says, you know, it's a fascinating thing because church history belongs to everyone and no one.
Huh.
And Protestants have the bad habit of saying, like, just dismissing it all, like, oh, that's Catholic stuff. And it's like, okay, yeah, I mean, but you know, the Catholic Church in the way that we know it is not what the 3rd century church was. It's not what the 5th century church was. And you're throwing away a lot of the, you know, the mothers and the fathers of your faith that, you know, that helped construct the church as we know it. And, you know, you're dismissing them, which always rubbed me the wrong way. So case in point is like, you know, most people have never heard the name Ignatius of Antioch. And it's like, well, you know, who's that? Well, that's the disciple of John the Revelator. Like, wait a second, you mean there was a dude who like sat at the feet of the literal disciple of Christ and who like, you know, heard the stories about like Jesus from the guy who was walking with him firsthand? Like that dude existed? Yeah, he existed. And he wrote us a string of letters. And it's like, we don't know about that? Nobody talks about that? Like you're one generation removed from the New Testament and nobody gives a crap, which is like mind-boggling to me. Polycarp of Smyrna was another one of the disciples of the disciples. And the letters, well, the letters plural, that Ignatius wrote and the letter singular that Polycarp wrote, they're beautiful. Like they're orthodox. They are so, I don't know, like captivating with how they're written. They read very similar to the New Testament, and they're rich. And it really bugs me that like Protestants are just sleeping on that stuff, man. Because there's a whole history that I feel like the church doesn't own. So yeah, I'm sorry, I'm ranting at this point.
No,
But
it's also good. I like your perspective. I don't. So I grew up in the Protestant church, so
mhm.
it's interesting to see your perspective as seeing how that is.
Yeah,
And I do, especially since I go to like a Reformed Protestant church. A lot of this just kind of focused on like the Reformation, which
mm,
is a long time after that. So and kind of just focusing on a lot of like specific doctrine. So yeah, it's cool. That's cool to hear that perspective from you and to see like that no one's really talking about this. And yeah.
yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, even with like, you know, the Reformation and stuff, I mean, all of those guys were quoting the earlier church fathers. Um, you know, John Calvin was quoting Thomas Aquinas, and he was quoting Ignatius of Antioch. He was quoting St. Augustine. Um, and so I don't know like how that disconnect happened, uh, where it's like the earliest ones kind of got tossed to the wayside. Um, but yeah, it's fascinating to me, especially when you, because I mean, you know, our culture has a fascination with martyrs, but the era of martyrdom wasn't in the Reformation. I mean, there was certainly persecution and stuff happening, but like, you know, the martyrs that are revered as martyrs, you know, killed by not by other Christian sects, but by, you know, the Romans or, you know, the pagans or whoever. That all took place in the first 4 centuries. Uh, and so, I mean, not to discount, you know, foreign cultures and modern day martyrs, but yeah, like the prototypical martyrs that people think about when they, you know, think about the stoning of Stephen. Um, yeah, a lot of those stories took place in that era.
Gotcha. Cool. All right. Well, as much as I like talking about theology and all this stuff, I do want to move on to some like other to music
Yeah.
and like some influences. I know you said your first like one of the first guitars you bought was like a 7 string. So what band in particular got you interested in metal? I know you mentioned Meshuggah, but anything else maybe earlier or
Yeah. Oh man. So like honestly, the first metal band that I ever listened to um was a Demon Hunter.
okay.
Uh like I mean, you know, we're talking about Christian, non-Christian metal. I accidentally found Demon Hunter, and it was like that was the first time I had ever heard a metal band that was like screaming their lyrics. And I was like, "What is this?" And yeah, and it really captivated me. So from there, I kind of grew and evolved, and found For Today and Sleeping Giant and Oh Sleeper and Becoming the Archetype. Um, I think by the time I started playing metal, um, I was really into bands like A Plea for Purging. They really have a soft spot in my heart to this day. Um, and then it wasn't until I was probably 20 that I discovered Meshuggah and yeah, the grandfathers of extreme metal and all that. But yeah, I would say that A Plea for Purging was a big influence on the stuff that I'm trying to do.
Cool. Yeah, for me, it was more of like some older classical metal at first. Like Metallica is my all-time favorite band.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of video games like Guitar Hero or Rock Band really introduced like more of the harder rock or metal music. Because my dad was all into like some of the rock bands from like the late 70s, early 80s. So like
Mm-hmm.
the Boston, the Foreigner, like all that kind of stuff. So when I found out like, or I think I heard or like Enter Sandman on Rock Band or Ones on Guitar Hero 3, that kind of stuff. That's what dived into that. And then you have other, oh, like you say, Linkin Park's not really like it's new metal, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
the aggressive vocals really got into because my older brother had Meteora on CD, so I listened to that through him and a lot of other yeah, I think, and then have like the bands you mentioned too, like For Today. And actually, I think Killswitch Engage was one of the first bands that actually got me used to like the screaming vocals
Mm-hmm.
because it's kind of like an acquired taste, but like I'm all all into it now. It's like the majority of what I listen to and just love it. So
Definitely.
well, cool. Let's see. So it's influences. Now for you talked about how you did music production first, and for me, I know I started playing before I even thought about doing music production. Like I didn't even really think about it until I went to college because I went to college for I have a music business degree from a small
Oh, word.
school called Montreat College
Mm-hmm.
up in the mountains of North Carolina.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so that's when it was like probably like my sophomore or junior years when I really got into like recording and that kind of stuff. I really got interested in that. But in terms of just like writing, you talked a little bit about dubstep and for guitar, like what's your normal process for writing music for Heliocentric? Is it like the age old question, is it lyrics first or is it music first? Yeah.
Oh man. So, well, I'll talk about guitar stuff first. So, for me, I am a black sheep and kind of the bastard child of the music production scene, um, because I have never owned a piece of analog gear. I've never owned a guitar amp. I've never owned a pedal board. I've never owned an analog compressor, reverb unit, anything like that. Um, I am entirely in the box. So, I've got my guitar, got my bass, I got a whole bunch of plugins, and the rest is production magic. Um, so as far as like writing music, for my last album, Ishmael, the way that I conceptualized it was sort of like, okay, I'm writing a very long-winded paper of sorts that has goes off into a lot of different directions. Um, and so like I knew that there were certain themes and topics that I wanted to address on the song. And so like one of those was, how did the nation of modern day Israel, how did they respond and react to the Holocaust? How does the Holocaust influence the ideology of the nation of modern day Israel? And so I knew that that was a thing that I wanted to talk about. So I started writing a song that sounded like the feeling that it gave me. And so if you listen to the song Never Again, it's got this really driving kind of like marching pace to it. Dun, and you can just see some soldiers like carrying on. And so usually like with lyrics and stuff, maybe there's like one or two lines that's really, really key that like, okay, I'm basing the whole song around this one lyric. And so then I'll write the entire music of the song, and then I'll fill in the gaps with the lyrics after the entire song is written.
Nice. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like you really put a lot of thought into like how you go about like writing your music out. I know, I don't know if this is like a majority, but I hear a lot of like bands kind of like will start out with just like the music, and then there'll be a certain set of people. Maybe it's just like one main songwriter, or it's a collective of band members contributing to the lyrics. So that's, I feel like that's like a general, I won't say consensus, but like a common way, I guess, you go about like writing music. But you put a lot of thought into like how you want the music to sound, of how you're doing, or how you're really putting emotion to like the ideas and the words you want to say in the music. And I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And I think that is one of my favorite parts about being a one-man band, is that like I get to oversee the process through its entirety. It's like, well, maybe the drummer wrote this part of the song and the guitarist wrote that part of the song. And then the vocalist says, yeah, I want to take these very disjointed pieces and I want to say, yeah, this song is about taxing the rich. But it's like, well, that's not what the drummer was thinking when he wrote that part. And that's not what the guitarist was thinking. And so it almost feels like, I don't know, it feels disjointed to me. Whereas like I'm able to sit down and say like, no, every part of this song is about this topic. And that's a blessing and a curse, because then it's like, well, if I write a crappy song that doesn't properly convey that emotion or properly tell that story, well, then I can't blame anybody else. That squarely falls on me. So
Yeah, there are definitely pros and cons. I know with one of my previous guests, her and I were talking about how in her band, there's like a lot of compromise with like how you contribute to the different pieces. So like she was the drummer, she was contributing to the parts of that, but then the front man, he was the guitar / like lead vocalist in that. So there was a lot of like what he was contributing, and so it's just like a mesh of like ideas and, like I said, compromise of that. But yeah, I understand too. I don't know if I had said this already, but I'm writing music by myself as well. It's definitely the struggle of like, I wanted to be in bands in like high school and college, but it just never worked out between people. I don't think anyone was interested in the heavy, at least going as heavy as I wanted to, right? So yeah, so it's just like, I'll just do it by myself. I have some gear, but like I pretty much do everything in the box too. I bought some plugins from Joey Sturgis Tones, and just get the basics and see what I can do, and just been messing with that for the past couple of years. So
that'll do it, man.
Yeah, that's all you really need nowadays, right?
Truly.
Do you with the your album Ishmael, was that like all done like mixed, master, produced by you, or do you do someone? No, it was all you. Okay. Nice.
So my my first EP and album, um, Contramundum and Perpetual Felicity, those were mixed and mastered by a friend of mine, Isaiah Prather, who he did a phenomenal job and did it for like way less than he should have. He's an absolute legend. Um, and it was amazing getting to like work alongside with him. But I think that I needed to, so I sat in with him in person. He was living up in Ohio at the time. And so I like went and sat with him in person as he was mixing and mastering. And it's sort of, I needed that validation of knowing like, yeah, there's no witchcraft going on here. It's not like he's hitting some magic button that I, as a newbie producer, don't have access to. It's like, no, he's doing all of the same stuff that I'm doing. He has all of the same tools that I have. He's just better at it. And when I saw that and realized that like that's possible, it gave me the confidence to say like, yeah, no, I'm going to try to do this on my own. And, you know, however many mix revisions I have to do to make it sound good, that's what it'll take. So yeah, I mean, the entirety of Ishmael was recorded in my college dorm room with $100 microphone. It's funny because like, yeah, COVID hit in what, like March of 2020.
Yeah, it was like mid to late March because I know so one of the last concerts I went to in 2020 was Silent Planet, and that's when people were wearing masks, but like in like saying,
Right.
"Oh, we'll wash your hands and do all that stuff." I don't think it like fully shut down until like very end of March, early April.
Right. So during that time, I had written most of the instrumentals for Ishmael, 2/3. And then COVID hit, and it's like, shoot, well, all of my friends are getting sent home. And I was one of the only kids on campus who got permission to stay on campus and who wasn't kicked out. So, you know, I stayed there in my little college apartment, and, you know, I was like, well, nobody's here in the building. I'm not going to get any noise complaints. So I did all of my screaming in my, yeah, college apartment bedroom. And I don't know, it worked out really well. And so yeah, I don't know if I mentioned that or if you know the story behind that, but Ishmael was my senior project for undergraduate.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
yeah. And so that's that album, and the 93-page paper explaining the lyrics was what I turned into my professors to get my degree. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's really cool actually. I didn't have like my final, I guess, like practicum was going off into Nashville to write and perform music. It's a program called Best Semester, and then there's like a
You're kidding me,
yeah.
dude. So I did the best semester in Jordan,
Oh,
and
okay.
that's where like a lot of the inspiration for Ishmael came from, was through my best semester trip my junior year, and then I was writing music about it my senior year.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I it was like my last semester of college. Went off there and wrote and performed a bunch of stuff, and then we went on our like final exam was like going on tour. So we toured a couple colleges, and that was the spring of 2016.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So that's when I realized like uh I just like really enjoy writing music. Touring, it's cool. I don't, it's not like a necessity. I know a lot of musicians are just like touring is like all they know. That's what they do. You know, it's just like, and you heard a lot of musicians when they couldn't tour last year, you know.
Mm,
Uh, so like, I mean, I'm not saying I'm opposed to touring at all. I'm just like, what I most enjoy is the creative process.
yeah.
If I can do that, uh, for either myself or for others, that like that'd be cool, you know.
Oh yeah. No, I get that. Well, word.
Yeah. Let's see. Do I have anything? I'm trying to think what else. tour life. Going on to this last couple of questions here, I guess. What are some things you kind of learned along the way of like your writing process and just the way of like that you, I know it's like, would you say like heliocentric is kind of like I would hate to say it put it this way, but like a side gig? Because I know you got work apart from the band, right? From what it looks like, you're like a videographer, right? Okay, cool. That's what I thought.
Yeah. Yeah. So video editing and producing. I work for a small digital media company in downtown Raleigh. And yeah, so that's the full-time gig at the moment. That's what keeps the roof over my head. And then doing heliocentric in the evenings. And that's everything from, making the stupid YouTube, Instagram skits that I do to, writing new content. So, I mean, the dream would be that someday I find a way to fund heliocentric to be my full-time gig, but it's a niche genre, and yeah, no disappointment if that doesn't happen. Let's see, what was your question again? I'm sorry, I
Oh
trailed
no,
off.
that's okay. I asked the question, then kind of went off in a little bit there. It's like what you learned along the way of like the writing process and stuff of just like music.
Oh, dude, I'm still learning. The thing that I always go back to is some wisdom that one of my mentors gave me. He was the guy that took me under his wing and let me be an intern for him at a film studio in Salisbury, North Carolina. But he always had this quote where he just said, "Do it badly," which is so counterintuitive to everything that you hear about, give 110% and all this nonsense. But his resolution was always just like, no, whatever you're doing, do it badly. And the idea with that was to combat perfectionism, because, for people like me who are really plagued by it, it's like, oh, well, I can't start writing an album because I'm not talented enough on guitar, or, I can't do the production because I'm not good enough at X, Y, and Z. I have to, and you keep pushing it off and pushing it off. It's like, just do it badly. Just do it badly, let it flop, let it suck, and then do it again and do it badly and have fun doing it. And so, I mean, that's kind of been like a mantra for me, because anything good that I've ever done has been only through, first doing it badly, and getting really comfortable with doing it badly. So yeah, it's my motivational pep talk to anyone who wants to do music.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've like been that I haven't taken action for things just to do with like fear of it not being good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But even just looking, I was like listening to demos I had done when I was like back in 2018, and then hearing the song that I wrote a couple months ago. That's like the last finished song I did, and just hearing the difference of being like, huh, if I didn't start doing that 3 years ago, seriously, like intentionally, like, would I just be there now, or or just to see that, rather hear the where I've come from then too is, and not to say that like I still sometimes don't take action, but yeah, I like that. Do it badly, because so many people are like fixated on doing it right the first time because you don't want the feeling of failure or like looking bad, or yeah, especially with the way social media presents itself as like everything. So like, even, man, I can tell you how many like TikToks look like they're so professional quality video and stuff like that. You're like, how do people have time to like make this look so good? But then there's a lot of people that like just put their phone right there, play guitar. And like, man, I can tell you how many people I've seen too, like also just like do that with the latter, and it sounds so good because their heart is just into it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
No, 100%, man. I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Well, cool. Man, I don't have any more questions, but I want to keep talking. I don't trying to find anything else to talk about. I know you said you had gone a little bit into seminary. Seminary. Did you ever felt like called to ministry, or was that just like how did you get into like videography after your endeavors with like college and music and all that stuff?
Yeah, man. I had a wild ride. So, I mean, I think going out of, graduating from high school, I was like, oh shoot, I want to be the next Billy Graham, right? And so I started going to school for that, and I was like, okay, yeah, maybe not that. Maybe I want to be the next like Christian scholar. I'm trying to think of the next William Lane Craig or whoever else. And so then I graduated from seminary at 21, and then went back to do my undergrad. So kind of did it backwards, but so it's like, okay, well, I'll go to undergrad to become a Christian scholar. And then realized really quickly early on, it's like, yeah, there's like three dudes who are doing what I want to do. And then the 99% of people are just, pushing papers and they're writing stuff that never gets read. And it's like, okay, well, that's kind of dumb. Um, so then the possibility of doing like intellectual music that hopefully, is encouraging some souls along the way. Uh, that's been kind of the vision and the goal ever since then. Um, and yeah, I feel like it's kind of been the best of all three worlds, right? Um, because I mean, yeah, first and foremost, like, my passion is theology, philosophy, history, and all of that jazz. And the music is kind of just what would you say? A transport, a cart, a vessel for that. Um, and so, yeah, that was a big part of my paper. Um, my senior thesis was arguing why academic material is better utilized when put to music instead of than written on paper. And my whole argument was like, listen, man, I'm a stupid idiot in his 20s who's writing about things that are way over my head. I can write it and spend a lot of time writing it, and my professor is going to read it. Maybe my parents will read it, and then it's going to get shoved in a drawer and get covered in dust and never see the light of day again. And that grieves me. And so the beauty of like putting something like this to music is that no, these stories get retold, these ideas get retold. um People download it on their iPhones and shove it in their pocket and listen to it on repeat, and it lives on. I think there's something really powerful in that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you see a band like For Today and see how Manny had his message throughout the entirety of their band, and some people are just like, even I was like, man, I miss For Today because they're just like, I feel like they're kind of just like a unique band and like how they kept their message like that. Even though that was like, and then when it was done, right? Like he was like, all right, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna just become a pastor, and then that's it. So, uh, whatever stage you go on to next is whatever it is. It's cool. Like this is part of life, just finding trial and error of what you're meant to be doing in this world, right?
Yeah, yeah. No, and that whole thing is a terrifying and exciting journey. you know
Yes, yeah, very
because
much.
everyone's just BSing it until figuring it out one step at a time, right? and and that's exciting to me. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, cool. I don't have anything else for you. I think that's all the questions I have. But it was really fun chatting with you and getting to know you a little better. Maybe I don't know. Maybe down the road collab or something, or maybe hang out, or I don't know. I'd love to just stay in touch, and really
Yeah.
excited to see what do you have planned next. I know you have your album that came out and the new single that came out.
Mhm.
What else do you have planned, or do you have anything planned for this next year?
So, I mean, I think that for the next year, I've got a lot of books that I'm reading through at the moment. Um, and I think that that's the main focus is I have an album idea in my mind. Um, and I don't want to get too much into the specifics of that yet. It it thwarts your creativity when you talk about it too much, I think.
I know what you mean.
But
Yep.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, I, I I've been sitting on the single one hand clapping for a while. Had to get the mix to a place where I was happy with it. Um, but I'm really excited to start writing again and start writing the next album.
Cool. Well, I'm looking forward to hearing it, man. I really like what you got, what you are doing. So you guys, but you what you're doing. And yeah, thanks again for joining me here and getting to talk.
Of course, man. It was an absolute pleasure.